This is 5 Live Sport.
Tuffers and Vaughan's Cricket Show.
It's hotel life once again for the England men's and women's cricket teams. For the men's, Series 1 in Sri Lanka, but a tougher test faces them in India. Tuffers. Let's have a look at the stats. India's last 34 tests at home, they have won 28 of them. So what chance are you giving England?
Well, Ellie, every series starts 0-0, doesn't it? But India's so strong at home. England are going to have to be at the top of their game. But things are coming together nicely, so they still have a chance, but I fancy India.
Bonnie, we thought we wouldn't ask you to give a prediction for the eventual scoreline in this series, just for once, because that always goes well. But the England batsmen who are potentially about to face Indian spin in India, what is the tip you're going to give them?
Well, Ellie, when I was at Yorkshire playing with Darren Lehman and I wasn't scoring so many runs, I used to put my bat in Darren Lehman's bag to try and get some runs off his bats onto my bat. Just go and put your bat next to Joe Root's and try and copy exactly what the skipper's doing, because he's playing spin incredibly.
Well, we've got plenty of reaction to come to the series in Sri Lanka. We will be out in New Zealand with England's Kate Cross. And how good is Tuffers at skipping to keep fit? We'll find out.
Tuffers and Vaughan's Cricket Show.
On 5 Live.
You're looking worried, Tuffers. I don't think we're going to present you with a skipping rope and actually make you skip. But after Jimmy Anderson put everyone to shame on Breakfast TV
He did
this
well,
morning.
didn't he?
He did. Well, we won't put it past us for the moment. My first question's really for you two. Oh, what's it like not having to get up at 3:30 in the morning?
Oh. I enjoyed it in a funny sort of way. It was really nice to go into the Oval. Well, first of all, to drive to the Oval, and there was no one on the roads and everything. It was a completely different view of life that early in the morning. The stadium was empty, the sun was rising over the pavilion and everything. I quite enjoyed it, and we were treated to a couple of great Test matches. So, it kind of made the day go a bit quicker.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with Tuffers. I mean, when you can't kind of think, oh, wait a minute, I've got to get up at 3:15 to go and broadcast at Media City, a 20-30 minute drive. You know, before the show, I was like, oh, this could be quite tough. Once I got up and went and had my brew, got in the car, no one on the road. You got to Media City, no one at Media City, barring the people on the gate. Simon Mann was always there to greet me at around 4 a.m. Simon,
in his cheery way.
He was in delightful mood at 4 a.m. with his croissants and his muesli. And then the cricket, as Phil said, it was terrific. You know, I think I love watching cricket all the time, but particularly when there's a little bit in it between, you know, the balance is good between bat and ball. And, you know, what we found in Galle, that the spinners came into the game. And when the ball's spinning, it's just active and there's always something happening. You always feel there's a few wickets about to fall. And when someone stands up and gets a score, i.e. Joe Root or Tiramani, it stands out because they've played so well and they've had to. No, I really, really enjoyed it. I wouldn't say I want to do it every week, Ellie. No, but I enjoyed the 2 weeks of the 3:30 a.m. starts.
Yeah, and in a way, actually, I kind of think it felt more like we were experiencing cricket in the winter in the way that the vast majority of cricket fans in this country experience cricket in the winter. Because if you're really lucky, you know, I mean, you, Michael, do get to travel abroad quite a lot to watch cricket in the winter. You know, if you're a member of the Barmy Army, you might do that in normal circumstances. But we were in the same boat as pretty much everyone else, Tuffers, weren't we?
Yeah, we were, and it started snowing, didn't it, on a couple of occasions? And we're sitting in there in the TMS box, pitch black, and it started snowing, and we're watching pictures of these guys running in and bowling with steam coming out their ears, going redder and redder and redder, and it just looked glorious over in Galle, didn't it? I mean, the sun was shining, you kept seeing the sea lapping up against the fort and everything. So, it was a bit surreal.
And
but
you had the foxes, didn't you, down at the Oval? Phil,
yeah.
They were depositing on a length.
Yeah, we had about five
occasions.
Five foxes every morning used to come over and have a little sniff around on the length there, and and they were all sleeping in the stands and everything. So it was quite a surreal experience, but very enjoyable.
Well, I know loads and loads of you were tuning in and listening online or tuning in your digital radios at the early hours of the morning, and we had so much love for what you guys did on TMS. So it was really well worth doing, I think, and thank you for all the lovely messages that we've had. Look, let's talk then about these Test matches, because this is the first T&V we've had since the Tests. So what surprised you most about the England team that you saw play out there, and how they approached it, how well they did? Michael, what was the thing that stood out for you?
I think, you know, the captain was outstanding. You know, the way that he's played and led. You got to remember playing in Gaul. This isn't a Sri Lankan team that's going to be remembered in time, but to win 2 games at a venue that is so difficult to win, having lost the toss twice.
Yeah.
So knowing that you're batting last on a pitch that you know is going to turn hugely from pretty much day 2. The first test, they got a gift. You know, Sri Lanka batted so badly, being bowled out for 135. They played some horrendous strokes, but then England capitalised with the captain getting that tremendous double century. Stuart Broad led the way with the seamers in the first test. Jimmy Anderson, the senior bowler, in the second test. The spinners came in at the right time. They struggled in the first innings of the second test when the pitch was at its flattest. That was a little bit of a warning sign of what may come in India in a few weeks' time. But in the second innings, they then delivered. You know, when the ball was spinning and they needed to, they delivered for the team. And I think if you look down from 1 to 11, everyone contributed. You know, Dom Sibley's innings in the last innings, where I'm not saying his place was ultimately under threat, but a lot of people are starting to question his ability to play spin, and he gets a nice not-out score, so that'll give him a big boost. Zach Crawley struggled. You know, he was great in the summer last year, but he struggled the first time that we've kind of looked at Zach Crawley and gone, that's your first kind of roadblock, if you like, as a young England batsman that you've come to. How are you going to manoeuvre yourself around that? Dan Lawrence looked great in the first test. In the second test, he got a couple of not so bad balls, but probably made a couple of mistakes. Again, a lesson for him that international cricket, 1 week's very rewarding, and you get all the plaudits. The week after, you get a bit of criticism. So that's a lesson for him. Mark Wood, I thought, was tremendous. You know, to keep running in and then eventually getting a few wickets, and to keep his pace at around 145, 150 kilometres an hour in the heat on those kind of wickets. Sam Curran nipped in at the right times. They all just nipped in, Joss, but you can name every single one of the players. At some stage, they just contributed something, not as much as the captain, because he was the standout.
Yeah, I think what else impressed me, Mike, as well, was sort of like game management, if you know what I mean. The way that Root and everyone seemed to realise crucial periods of play during those 5 days of every test match, and knew when to dig in. You know, as you said, Mark Wood knew that he had to steam in. Jimmy Anderson knew he had to get wickets with the new ball to help his mates out on a flat pitch. Stuart Broad, as you said, you've named them all already, but it was just that the way they sort of understood how the game was going to pan out. It always gets quicker and quicker in the subcontinent. You know, days 3, 4 and 5, the game progresses. So you don't. It was just nice that they seem to know how to go about winning a game in those conditions, and that's what impressed me as well as everything Vaughan said.
Yeah, and I think in if you go back 2 years ago, I think we were rightly questioning the test team of the way that they played test cricket. They played it too flamboyantly, and as Phil said, I don't think they used to play the situation well at all. They just played one way, and if that one way worked, they were fine. But if the one way didn't work, it was like, well, what are you going to do now? And they didn't realise how to play. Whereas I think since Chris Silverwood's come in charge and been head coach, he's brought an old school. Well, not an old school. It's the way you play Test cricket. You dig in the first innings, you try and bat long, and when you get the ball in hand, when it's flat, you just hold a length and you just probe away and you try and work your wickets as hard as you possibly can. I think he knows that, in the spin department, England don't have a Muralitharan or a Shane Warne, but what they have to work out is a way of working them when the wicket's a little bit flatter. So I think the 2 tests in Sri Lanka will give those spinners a huge amount of confidence, but it's just the way they're playing Test match cricket. I have so much more confidence in the Test team now than I had 2 years ago, whereas I just feel that they're going to make the right... It might not work. They will get beaten, and I'm sure they'll lose a game or 2 in India, but I don't think it'll be because of the lack of playing the right way or trying to play the right way. They might get bowled out by an Ashwin or a Bumrah because they are very good, but I don't think it'll be because they're playing the real risky brand of cricket that they used to play. It'll be just that they come up against an opponent or some conditions that potentially they've just got the better of them.
Yeah, and I think Joe Root typified that. Everyone's been complaining about his 50s to 100s and about his conversion rates and everything. I saw a big difference in the way that actually Joe Root went about compiling his hundreds. I mean, he played superbly, but there was this big thing in English cricket about you get to 50, then you go through the gears, and then you sort of try to get on top of the bowler and completely dominate them and everything. No, just stay in that second or third gear. The only way you're going to get out.
Just stay in the second, don't you? Just
stay in second and
just prod along. What do you reckon? 52 miles an hour? Just
That's what I mean. Enjoy the scenery. Enjoy the day. don't give them a chance with a rash shot. I mean, the couple of sort of failures that we did see there were the guys coming down the pitch when not needed and hitting it up in the air. Stay in there. I mean, we saw Angelo Matthews as well get a great 100 just by realising I'm going to take all the risks out of my shots. I'm going to knock ones and twos, put the bad ball away and bat time. And that's what they did very well.
Yeah, we're going to talk. We're going to be hearing from Jonathan Trott in a second, who I spoke to a little bit earlier on, England batting coach, talking about Joe Root. Actually, I saw one tongue-in-cheek comment saying that Joe Root really needs to sort out his conversion rate from the 180s to the 200s, because it's not as good as it could be. We'll talk more about that. We'll talk, incidentally, on Monday. You guys are going to be back with Chappers, I think, doing a special Tuffers and Vaughan, where you're going to be focusing very much on selection, on the plans for the year ahead. It's a big question. And some in, some out ahead of the India series, of course. Rory Burns is one of those back in this increasingly competitive England squad.
Watching how the boys went about it in Sri Lanka, watching Ruti get all those runs and, seeing Sibbo in that last test stand up in that last innings and make a really gritty 50 that, a really good innings in the context of the game. I think it's just a really good thing to see. I want to be part of that competition. I like the fact that we're all trying to get as better and try and develop as much as we can. So just to, be around it, throw my name back my hat back in the ring. Obviously missed that due to, being at home for the birth of my first child. It's just a really good thing. I think competition's only going to help us improve.
Well, that was Rory Burns, who we would expect he'll come back in for Zach Crawley to open the innings alongside Dom Sibley, won't he, Michael? You assume that Sibley has done himself a lot of good by the runs he made in the second innings in the second test. Yeah,
you'd think so. You'd think it'd be Zach at number 3, Burns and Sibley, possibly Dan Lawrence at 6 or Ollie Pope. Dan Lawrence has played 2 test matches. I know they're trying to get Ollie Pope fit, so it looks like for that first test you would think it'd be Dan Lawrence to about 6. Ben Stokes comes back in at number 5, so Crawley at 3, Joe Root 4, Ben Stokes 5. It'd be Lawrence at 6 or Pope, probably Lawrence, and then Josh Butler at number 7, and then will it be Jofra Archer? Chris Wokes, will he come back into the team? Moeen Ali, will he play, or will they stick with the 2 spinners? I would think they'll stick with the 2 spinners that have just done so well in Sri Lanka, Phil. I don't think they'll make the change to Moeen Ali unless they're going for 3 spinners. They'll have to wait and see what the pitch is like in Chennai. But competition for places is everything. Again, I'll go back 2 years ago. There wasn't competition for places, and I think one of the best things that this England team have done in the time that Chris Silwood's had the role, they've really managed the Broad Anderson situation really well. And by managing it really well, it's kept those 2 on their toes as well. I think as senior players, if you just think you're playing every game and you can just kind of relax in the dressing room, it's you're part of the furniture. It's easy to get a little bit lapse in concentration, a little bit complacent, and understandably when you've played so much, and if they did, you'd understand why. By just bringing them out of a few games, giving a bit of experience to some others, Sam Currans, Chris Wokes, Mark Woods, Overton's played in time, Jofra Archer's come in. There is now a squad mentality that I think the bowling unit looks deep, a lot of depth in the bowling unit, and in the batting department there's a number of players, and there's going to be 2 or 3 that miss out potentially against Australia later on in the year that would fancy their chances of playing, but they're not going to be able to get into the 11, which is a good sign for the England team.
So big discussion about selection on Monday night, 9 till 10. Tuffers and Vaughan back with Chappers that night. If you want to hear more from Rory Burns, by the way, you can do that on the Stumped podcast. That is available on BBC Sounds. And I don't know if you talk about Broad and Anderson and alternating them, Michael. Listened to the Tailenders podcast earlier on, and Jimmy was saying that actually the fact that Broad had done so well in the first test made him think he didn't want to let the side down. He had to perform in the second test. So it's really interesting what you say about that. But speaking of James Anderson, he is now part of the England team who've gone from Sri Lanka straight to India, 6 days quarantine in what apparently is quite a nice hotel. Then they'll be able to get into the nets by February the 2nd. And the first test against India starts on February the 5th. So it is really tight, isn't it? But Jimmy Anderson skipping in his hotel room. Tuffers, did you ever do anything like that to keep fit in your hotel room?
Well, in the
The only thing
playground,
you skipped, Phil, was training.
Yeah, I used to skip training as much as, or a long distance run. That was what I tried to skip. But I mean, we interviewed David Milan when he was in Australia, and he said that he was trying to put up his running machine in his hotel room. So you've got to do something, because it's very. I mean, listen, I'm not an authority on this at all, really, but you do lose fitness quite quickly. So if you are just laying about, I mean, these guys are really fit anyway. So, a week of not doing too much, it's not going to be the end of the world. But, you've got to keep yourself ticking over somehow. And also, you've got to kind of keep your brain occupied a bit.
I don't know. Well, the way that they keep their brains occupied is that they play this I think it's called Call of Duty. Ben Stokes has arrived and they're playing this Call of Duty game. And I think you can watch them. I see him on Instagram all the time, promoting the fact that you can watch them. And if anyone
via Twitch, apparently, is the way
that's right. Yeah, that's right, Ellie. Anyone that's following Ben Stokes on Instagram, if you see the tour of his room, he has got a palatial palace room, as Ben. It's a monster. He goes on for about 5 minutes. There's another room, and then there's another room.
Yeah, I don't know whether the guys who got in, who flew in directly from England, got first dibs on the room. But it may well be the case, mind it. But one of those people, of course, was my next guest, who was now the England batting coach. It was Jacques Kallis in Sri Lanka, but in India, it's the turn of Jonathan Trott.
I'm in day 4 of quarantine. Well, I think it's day 4. I've lost track a little bit. I'm sort of waiting to get the letter under the door for when I can leave. We're staying right here. You can actually see the ocean here in Chennai. I'm just looking out my window now. It looks lovely, but sort of so close but so far away.
Yes. Now, let's talk about the challenges that lie ahead. You know better than a lot of people what it's like to win in India, because you did that in 2012. Just to remind us what happened in that series, because that was memorable in so many ways.
It certainly was. People forget we lost the first test match. So to win a test series in India and going 1-0 down after the first one, I think makes it even more special. Alistair Cook, I remember having a fantastic series, getting 300s in a row, and was his first series as captain. So he certainly led from the front. And then we went to Mumbai, where I think it was one of the great England performances. Yeah, I just think everyone hit their straps and everyone contributed. Monty Panesar, Graham Swan were phenomenal with the ball, backed up by Jimmy Anderson and the likes of Tim Bresnan. It just takes a couple of key performances to sort of turn the momentum of the Test series. And that certainly was the partnership between Alistair Cook and Kevin and Mumbai, where they both got massive hundreds. And you almost saw a time where a lot of English teams would have maybe capitulated or perhaps would have said, well, we can't play in India, we can't play in these conditions. And it gave the rest of the squad, I know, a lot of confidence saying we can do this. Let's go out and do it. And we won emphatically at the Wankhede Stadium, which is still one of the greatest memories in my life. Even though I got no runs in the game, I got 0 in the first innings, and thank God I didn't bat in the second.
And you're rather modest in not pointing out that you scored a century in the final test in Nagpur, didn't you? Along with Ian Bell.
Well, yeah. Well, we hung on there. Well, it was a draw. We didn't win that game, so I always like to think about hundreds where we won the game. But I'll take 100 where we draw a game and win a test series in India any day. So for us, quite an historic moment, if you like. I think it was longer having not won a test series in India than it was actually when we won the Ashes in 10-11.
And in that test in Nagpur, a young batsman called Joe Root made his debut.
Yes, that was his first game, yeah.
Have you talked to him about that? I mean, what were your impressions of him when he came out and, joined the team for the first time?
That was his first tour. I remember batting with him in a warm-up game. I remember being very impressed by a young guy coming in. I think he got 30 or 40. But then on debut, I remember him batting, it being 70 not out. I remember him batting in a cap in his debut test match. And I always thought that was quite brave of him. He always, obviously 2 spinners are on, and there he is batting for England in his playing cap. You bat in your helmet. That's what I was always taught. But here comes Joe Root in his cap and playing the way that he can. And this is going to be his 100th test match. What a career he's had and hopefully continues.
What do you make of the way he's developed? Not just as a person, as a captain, but as a batsman?
The thing with Joe is I'm always amazed whenever, as a youngster, he's very keen and a real student of the game, loves the game, constantly playing with his kit and practicing his batting and working really hard from day one. And then I did some work with him in the Pakistan series, and it's almost like he does it even more. He's even more of a student of the game, if you like. He's just a big kid playing cricket for England, who's captain, loves the game, loves the England cricket side, very passionate about it. The fire's even burning brighter than when he was a youngster. He was working really, really hard throughout the summer, and I think that's had a knock-on effect now to his game in this sort of series, or the series he had in Sri Lanka.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because you watch the way he batted in Gaul and you'd think, actually, this is somebody who shouldn't need a great deal of coaching. But is he open to being coached?
Absolutely. He's always thinking about the game, how he can improve, where the little 1%ers are, how he can get better all the time. That's such a good thing for any young cricketer out there who's playing really well. I'm not saying try and reinvent your game, but always look for those little 1%ers or little things that can add to making you a better player, and understanding what the best players in the world do that separates them from all the others that try and emulate them. And a lot of the time, it's just doing the basics really, really well. So when he was playing spin in Sri Lanka, he was, moving his feet incredibly well. And that's the one thing you pick up as a coach and you look for. His balance was excellent. And he worked really hard at getting that right. We all see the highlights when he plays big sweep shots, but it's the balls in between that he keeps out by doing the basics really well, that a lot of people don't see in highlights or you don't see in short packages. But you have to do those consistently well to allow yourself the time to score big double hundreds like he did.
And just going back to being able to play spin bowling, if you were to sit down and give us your top 5 tips on how to play spin, what would they be?
I think keep it as simple as possible, but I think picking length is key, and sort of your stride's important. Get really forward or get really back. Don't play from the crease. And you've got to decide whether you want to play with the spin, as if it's spinning away, playing on the offside as a right-hander batter, or if you play with, against the spin. And you've got to figure out a method for yourself. You've got to spend. It's not something that just happens overnight. You've got to find also exactly how you're going to do it. And that comes from practice and a lot of hard work, but also asking the right questions and watching people and learning. Those would be my tips. You look at all the great Indian players or the great subcontinent players or the great players who spin around the world. They make it look really simple and they don't try and overcomplicate things.
And watching the ball from the hand, the Indian coaches say you've got to kind of try and pick where the ball is going as soon as it, while it's still in the hand of the bowler, not even before it leaves the hand.
Well, I think sometimes what can happen if you watch the hand, you can sometimes, if you're relying mainly on that. I used to watch the ball and try and see the seam, whether it was spinning. So I never used to really watch the hand as such, because it's quite quick and there's lots of things going on with the wrist position and all that sort of stuff. So if you have preconceived ideas, I think sometimes you end up guessing if you miss certain sort of clues or indications. So I try to watch the ball a lot. And that's what I mean by picking length. If you're going to pick length, you have to watch the ball really hard and see the flight of it or the trajectory or the pace of it. So that's what I mean by picking length, is basically watching the ball and sort of knowing where it's going to bounce and understanding the pace it's coming down at.
That's really interesting. Do you think players can be taught to do that? Or is it something that you're either good at or you're not?
It all depends on the individual and the method they use. A lot of guys, as you said, to watch the hand. That didn't work for me. I found out by practicing, by trying to look at the hand, you'd get a little bit confused by his wrist position there was completely different to the other one. It doesn't really matter what his wrist position is. What matters is the ball and how that's coming down. So I used to watch the ball, the most important thing. So the wrist or the hand isn't really the most important thing. The ball that's actually going to get you out is the most important thing. So that's what I try to watch and try to keep that out as much as possible.
I mean, I suppose just the levels of concentration that you have to have is key as well.
Yeah, and that's what you have to do. You have to find your own techniques. You have to find what works for you, sort of mental rhythm, if you like, and your concentration, how you're going to go about for long periods of time. And if you want to score big runs, certainly in high-pressure situations like a test match. But also weigh your options. Make sure that they sort of free you, though, that concentration. It allows you to trust your natural instincts and the way you're going to go about winning the game for England.
Bearing in mind, it is going to be a very short time you're going to have together in the nets. How much do you think you can do between now and next Friday?
Well, I think there's quite a lot that can be done, really.
Can you do anything on Zoom? Is there anything you can do virtually before you actually get out there?
I think everyone's zoomed out around the world, aren't they?
Absolutely.
I'm sure there's chats. The guys have just come from Sri Lanka. They've just played back-to-back tests. They'll have a bit of a break. And maybe in a few days before they leave their rooms, we will be able to, get on the Zoom and have a chat about things and the opposition bowlers maybe and past experiences of playing in India. Yeah, I think that is sort of on the horizon, but I just think we're letting the guys have a few days off and then we'll get into the swing of things.
I'm sure that you and Ben and Jofra and co are not going to be strolling around outside, underneath the balconies of the guys who can't get out and say, "Oh, it's so nice out here, the sunshine."
Absolutely. I'm sure the swimming pool's overlooking a few of their rooms overlooking the swimming pool. Some swimming galas, some sun tanning, I'm sure. Synchronized swimming. I think we'll practice that.
And just one very final thought about this current squad and the way that it's sort of developed under Chris Silverwood and with Joe Root as captain as well. Does it remind you more now of the team that you were in that won the Ashes 10 years ago now down under and then went on to win in India?
I think so. I think you're starting to see the characteristics of the side, also the sort of characters in the side, if you like, the leaders, which we had and which this team has as well. I don't like to compare things. I like guys to have their own identity and teams to have their own identity. And I think the one similarity you want to have is that you win stuff. So winning a series in Sri Lanka, they've done that twice in a couple of years. We only drew in Sri Lanka. So to come to India and try and win again is an amazing achievement. And I'm sure the guys are chomping at the bit. But you have those powerful characters, your Ben Stokeses and your Josh Butlers and your captain Joe Root, that are respected all around the world. And I know a lot of players in the side I was part of, that was very similar and, if not the same.
Well, that was Jonathan Trott, England's batting coach. I really hope he does organise a synchronised swimming gala with himself, Ben Stokes, Rory Burns, Jofra Archer. I think have been absolutely sensational. It'll go down very well on Instagram. Look, so much, actually really interesting stuff, and great to talk to Jonathan Trott earlier on. We'll talk a bit more about batting and the challenges of batting out there. But let's focus on spin, and facing spin. And we want a Tuffers and Vaughan masterclass here. So, Phil, here you are. You're at the end of your run. You've got Michael at the other end. How are you getting him out? What's your approach? What are you going to do to get him out?
Well, first of all, you got to stay on as a bowler, as a spin bowler in India. So you've got to be able to sort of get yourself right into your work very quickly. Not necessarily, and you've got to work with your captain and you've got to work with your wicket keeper. And so for those first 2 or 3 overs, you've got to perhaps not set too many attacking fields and get into your work, because the worst thing as a spin bowler, and Michael will comment on this later, and the best thing for a batsman is not to let a spin bowler dot you up and have 6 balls at you, because then he starts pulling you around the crease, starts his variations, and where he's bowling from on the crease and what have you. So get some overs under your belt, get 2 or 3 maidens under your belt, and then start talking to your captain and start thinking, right, how are we going to squeeze him? Where are we going to start playing? Where are we going to start putting our field? Where are we going to open up gaps for him to try and hit into the gap, which perhaps isn't his favoured shot? What kind of? It's about fields, and it's not necessarily about bowling this ball, bowling that ball. That's just your natural sort of building of an over. That's kind of how you just naturally think, I'm going to bowl a couple of quick ones, then a slow one, then I might try and, take him a bit wider of the crease and then a little bit quicker and a little bit straighter. That's always sort of like ticking on in your mind. But you've got to be able to get on and stay on. And that is the conversation between you and your captain, that you've always got to be thinking about that. And then hopefully the wickets will come, and then that's your craft and what you see in a batsman. You would have done your sort of preparation, perhaps doesn't sweep, so we'll open the sweep up, try and encourage the sweep. Perhaps doesn't look to come down the wicket. He plays out in front of his pad and things, so he might have a silly point or a short leg or something like that. So all those sort of things are just ticking through your mind. But the first thing is to actually try and get like maidens at a batsman, because that's how you create pressure, and then that's what makes batsmen start to do silly things.
Yeah, and Phil said, the first thing that he looks to do is to stay on. Well, as a batter, you've got to stay in. So the first 20 deliveries is so important, and that starts in your preparation. It starts in the nets, really visualising what you're going to be facing that week. So England, February the 5th, are facing Ravi Ashwin. You've got to really understand the deliveries that Ravi Ashwin has, because as a batter, inside the first 10 deliveries, I reckon he's shown you every one. I reckon he's showing you the off spinner. He's probably showing you the doozer. He's probably showing you that arm ball because he's trying to get you out. So you have to have a mechanism of strong technique, good mindset, really quick thinking in your mind, because you're facing a slow bowler. I think a lot of players would think, you can kind of relax and you don't have to be quick in your mind, and certainly with your feet. You've got to be quicker with your feet and you've got to be quicker with your mind when you're facing your spinners. And you've got to see off those 20, 25 balls by just playing what I describe as not negative cricket at all, but just sensible cricket, just waiting for the right balls. But in your head and in your mind, you have to understand what are your scoring options when you first go out there. And I'm not saying it's dancing down and whacking it over the top. It's not necessarily a big lap slog. But if a ball comes into your zone that you've visualised, there you go. You've already thought about that and you can get off strike. And Phil's absolutely right. Your job as a batter facing spin is to make sure that he doesn't bowl you 6 balls, that you do get down the other end. So he's got another batter to face and bowl to, because, the plans change for every single batsman. It might be to me that, you'd fire in a quick one because I did like to sweep the ball. It might be that they realise that I didn't dance down the wicket too many times, so they could open mid-on and mid-off a little bit wider, say, go on, Vaughan, you try and hit me down the ground, because we know you're not as good at doing that as you would be sweeping the ball. So there's lots of little kind of tricks that you can play, but the most important aspect for me as a batter is being calm and precise and clear in what you're trying to achieve in those first 20 balls. And if you get over that 25 balls, you then start to see a bigger picture. When you first go out there isn't a big picture. It's very, very tough, and there'll be fielders around the bat and they'll be very confident and they'll be making lots of noise, and you've got to try and quieten them down. And I think many players particularly in this era, try and quieten the fielding side down by hitting a big 6 or hitting a big 4, which actually brings the spinner into the game. What an opposing team doesn't like is someone to play with great control and just manoeuvre it into the gaps, just play with great defence and say to the opposing captain, by the way, I'm under full control. And that's what your job is as a batter, to send the dressing room a message saying, I'm under full control facing these spinners.
Yeah, those first 20 balls, Ellie, or 20 or 30 balls, and this is what the England spinners have got to get better at. When a batsman first comes in, he's very vulnerable. So you have the slip, the gully or something, or perhaps one in front. But don't give them that release ball. Don't give them that wide, short delivery, because there's nothing better than an easy ball to just get away. You've got to keep them pinned in the crease. You've got to keep them propping and cocking, as we used to call it. Not quite knowing, feeling for the delivery, and because then just things happen. As Michael said, when a batter gets those 30 balls, especially in the subcontinent, things just don't. And what I hated over there in India, and what Joe Root showed in Sri Lanka, is that they always had that release shot. They always had that 1 or 2. You're always going for 2 or 3 and over. You could never keep them in the crease, and whether that's going right back. Sachin Tendulkar used to go right back on his stumps, and you'd be bowling like what you thought was a good length ball on sort of like middle and off stump. He'd be going back and just sort of knocking it round the corner, or knocking it down to sort of like a short third man, and you'd be going, oh, come on, fielders, you know what I mean? But he was just a master of that. And then you slightly toss one up because you think your length is wrong, and then he skips down the pitch and punches you through extra cover or something like that. You've got to keep your length right. As Jonathan Trott said, the main sort of thing about batting is picking up on that length so quickly. Quick feet, get back right at your stumps and knock it away for the 1s and 2s. The bowler comes fuller, you come down the wicket, and then you can get to the pitch of the ball and push it away.
I don't know which one of the two of you to ask about taking the wicket of Sachin Tendulkar with spin, because you both did it, didn't you, Michael?
Well,
I found, was it true?
Oh, Ellie, what have you done?
Sorry, Tuffers. Clearly he was not.
Through the gate, Michael, wasn't it?
Yeah, I've still got the ball, Phil. Still got the ball and the stump, and the ball and the stump. They're both signed by Sachin. Both up on my wall, Phil.
Good poles then, Mike. Good wickets there.
I haven't kept many pieces of memorabilia, but that is a piece I've kept.
Yeah, it is available. It's available on YouTube if you want to find it.
Sorry, Elliot. Just another thing that Trotty.
Sorry,
and another thing that Trotty then just mentioned as well is concentration. Hot, you know what I mean? Difficult conditions, men round the bat, chatter in your ears, you know what I mean? Sweat. You're going to be sort of cramping up sometimes if you're having a long knock. You've got to be right on it when you're playing India.
Really fascinating. It's going to be such an interesting series. What about the importance of building a big first innings out in India? Well, tomorrow there's a special TMS podcast on one of the most famous innings in recent English cricketing history. Kevin Peterson's 186 at Mumbai in 2012 not only set up England's series win there, but it's also widely regarded as one of the best ever innings in India by an overseas batsman.
I could tell you all sorts here about how I walked out to bat thinking whatever I was thinking. One thing I do know is that walking out to bat in Mumbai, the previous few days of practice were some of the best days that I'd had practicing in an England shirt. The way that I'd solved the issue of my foot movement from Ahmedabad, the way I was striking the ball, the way I was hitting the ball, and the way I was trusting my defence, I knew that I had a chance. And there were just some days when I walked out to bat where I knew I'd get runs. Just that's it. You weren't getting me out today. It was as simple as me taking guard and putting my bat down, and I just said to myself, "Oh, here we go. Good luck." And that's what it was. But as many of those days that I had quite a few days too, where I would take guard. I'd ask the umpire, "Can I have leg stump, please?" I'd mark leg stump. I'd look around the field. I'd put my bat down, and geez, I would go, "Oh no, this is chaos. I'm going to have to fight like anything here to get myself to 10. And on a number of those occasions, I couldn't get myself to 10 because things just didn't feel right. But I do remember walking out to bat, taking guard at the Wankhede Stadium. And when I put my bat down, it felt exactly the same way as I was practicing. It felt exactly the same way as I was playing the spinners in the nets. And I knew that day I was going to get runs. I didn't know how many I was going to get, but I was going to get runs. It was just one of those days.
Well, you can listen out for that tomorrow on the TMS podcast, and it'll also be on 5 Live Sport from 9:30 tomorrow night. Look, before we talk about what went right to create those big first innings in that series, Michael, just talk about your batting experience out there. You only played in 2 tests, didn't you? And actually, one of them you got in the history books for all the wrong reasons. Just tell us about that.
Don't touch the ball, Mike. Don't pick it up, Mike. Don't pick it up.
It was in Bangalore. Did I get to 64? I was playing great. Playing ground, and here we go. I get a big century here, and then all of a sudden, I think I went to play a sweep shot, and the ball kind of bounced off my pad, and it bounced to the left, and it spun back. It was just trickling. I'm convinced it wasn't going back to hit my stump. So, me being the nice chap, just thought I'd help the Indians out. I'd pick it up and flick it to short leg, and a couple of seconds later, Sachin appealed, and I was given out handled ball. I mean, come on, Sachin, you got all those runs. He decided to pick on a youngster and send me on my way back to the show. I was fuming because I didn't think it was out. I was saying, how dare they give me out? And then I realised, I'd completely screwed it up. So thanks for reminding me of that, Ellie.
I think you were still downplaying the sweep shot, Mike, weren't you, when you picked it up? That's why, because Gucci, I played in a test match when Gucci did that and punched it away at Old Trafford. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
But I think that was it.
The only two, because it only happens 7 times in Test cricket history that batsmen's got out for handling the ball. So was it the only two English batsmen who've done that? Because actually it happened to Steve Waugh, didn't it, I think?
Yeah, Steve Waugh.
About the same time as it happened to you.
Yeah, I think I don't know who the other 4 of the famous group are. The 7.
The famous 4.
Well, the 7. I mean, that's remarkable, isn't it? I'm delighted to be in that group. Some stellar names in there. Gucci and Steve Waugh.
We need Andy Zaltzman, don't we, to tell us?
I'll tell you, that would be a great bit of memorabilia. Get all the gloves that pick the ball up and put them in a case signed by the famous 4. It'll go for a fortune.
I should get Sachin to sign that as well, because he was the one that appealed.
I was going to say, was it before or after you got him out at Trent Bridge?
Oh, before. I was a kid. I mean, I think it was 2001.
Yeah.
And it rained, actually. It rained in Bangalore. The heavens opened for the last couple of days and we got a draw. We were on top in the game.
Let's move on from this kind of interesting anomaly and talk about the business of scoring big runs. And actually, we talked about it a lot, didn't we, during the Sri Lanka series? You've got to get big runs in the first innings. And when we're talking big, you're talking really big, aren't you? Because I was looking at the stats from the last time England played in India in 2016, 2017. They drew the first test and then they lost the next 4 big. And in 4 out of the 5 tests, they scored more than 400 runs in the first innings. So you've got to go big, haven't you, Tuffers?
Yeah, absolutely. And don't rest on your laurels as a bowling side, thinking you can go out there with 450 behind you and they won't go whizzing past you. It was interesting there just about KP. I think also the mindset of playing in India. I can remember when I went over there in '92, and also it happened a little bit to the Sri Lankans as well. You know, you see a couple spin and you lose sort of self-belief and self-confidence that you can overcome it. You're going to get a few whiz past your outside edge, a few little sort of top edges that land safe and what have you. But if you've got the confidence to sort of see that out, and what Mike always says, play the ball, not the man, you know what I mean? And just hang in there, things will get easier. So when you go to India, you've got to believe that, 60 or 70 is no good to you. If you get a good 60 or 70, then don't think to yourself, oh, well, I've played my part and I've done well and I'm going to go after it, slog one up in the air, because, it's the 150s and the 180s that get you those big scores.
Yeah, I think, Ellie, this Indian side, are particularly in home conditions, the hardest bowling attack to face, because they've got Bumrah, Shami, Yadav. They've got the youngster Siraj just got 5 from Brisbane, and they're talking won't even play in the first Test match. The one fortune for England is that Ravindra Jadeja's not going to be fit for the first couple of Tests at least, and he is an incredible all-rounder, averaging over 50 with the bat in the last couple of years, an average of 23 with the ball, bowls them fizzing left-arm spinners on the wickets that we'll find in India. It'll be a good loss for the England side that he's not playing, but you just know Washington Sundar, he potentially will play. Akshar Patel may play, Kuldeep Yadav might play. So they've got the spin options, they've got the pace options. And I look at the series that England have just had in Sri Lanka. Realistically, Sri Lanka had one bowler, and that was the left-arm spinner. Emandalia was fantastic. India will have 4 bowlers of high quality. Whoever they pick, there'll be 4 quality bowlers, spin, seam, you name it, pace, skillful seam bowlers. And in the batting department, Sri Lanka had Angelo Matthews, Tiramani, a bit of Dickwell, a bit of Chanama. So say 2.5 high quality Test match players. India will have 8. They'll have 8 players that potentially can get
they'll
Test
have
match.
Virat Kohli back, apart from anything else.
Yeah, Kohli's back. Ravi Ashwin will be at 8. He gets, he's got 4 Test match centuries, batting at number 8. So it's a different proposition. That's why it's a great challenge for this England team at this point in time, where they've won in South Africa, beaten the West Indies at home, beaten Pakistan at home, beaten Sri Lanka away, 4 series on the trot where they've won. The next step now, what you're going to be like against the best. It's a real good challenge for this team in the progression that they're on towards, hopefully this year, doing something very, very special, particularly in about 10 months' time.
Yeah. I can see England going toe-to-toe with them, actually, so long as that mindset right, so long as that belief's right, and that's what I've been saying from England, so long as that game management's right, and sort of, knowing when to sit back, knowing when to then push on and go for wickets and all that kind of stuff. I think they're going to go close. I think it's going to be a fascinating series, and I think it really is going to show where England are at the moment, because they've disposed of some teams pretty tastily, actually, but this team is a different kettle of fish, and in their own conditions, it is going to take every one of those players every day should be going back to their bed, whether they're bowled or batted or anything, exhausted, just because they've been right on it. Because if you're not on it for half an hour, you're not on it for a session, you're done.
So what is different, do you think, from where they were in 2016, 2017, Michael, or the 2016 Test matches, so kind of 4 and a bit years ago?
Yeah, I think selection. So the Indian team or the England side, I mean...
The England side, yeah, I'm thinking about.
England
because you look at the centuries, you got, Root scored 1, Moeen got a couple of tons out there, Keaton Jennings was got a century, Stokes as well, and obviously Alistair Cook. Yeah,
I mean, I just think the last year and a half, and I go back to this all the time. I thought it started at Headingley in the Ashes in 2019, where they got bowled out for 67 in the first innings, and all of a sudden the penny drops. I think through selection that wait a minute, we're probably picking the wrong style of players for Test match cricket, and they kind of reassessed and realised that they had to go to a method of picking, players that are willing to bat long periods of time to allow you to get those big scores. The problem in India, Ellie, is that you can play really, really well and lose. I thought England on the last tour competed really hard, but they just didn't have enough in the bowling department to get 20 wickets, and they got found out in the second innings when it was spinning out the rough, and Jadeja and Ashwin were doing all sorts of tricks. So you can play really well in India and get beat, and you can potentially lose 4-0 and play quite well. I mean, that sounds ridiculous, but it's possible, because India are such a good team. They're a powerhouse. The one thing that if England start well, I think there'll be a bit of pressure start to be building on Virat Kohli, the captain, because Ajinki Rahane took over in Australia. He got the huge rap of the way that he managed the team and potentially the way that his more loving management of the likes of Rishabh Pant, the youngster Shubman Gill. They weren't fearful of this powerhouse of Virat Kohli, who I think they're all a bit intimidated by him because he's a superstar. So if England can start well and keep Virat quiet in the first Test match, the pressure may build on the Indian side. But I do think, they won there a few years ago in 2012 by going 1-0 down. I don't think England will come back from going 1-0 down. I think it'll be a hard tour if they lose that first Test match.
Well, look, lots more to come on that series on Monday's Tuffers and Vaughan. And I have to say, actually, I found myself watching over breakfast this morning the highlights of the Australia-India series and thinking, oh, Rishabh Pant, what a player. Can't wait to watch him bat. And then I'm thinking, hang on a second, he's playing England. But it will be an amazing series, I'm sure. England's women are also living quarantine life. They are in New Zealand, 3 ODIs and 3 T20s across February and March. And joining us from her hotel room, somewhere in New Zealand, is England's Kate Cross. Hello.
Morning, everyone. How are you?
Morning.
Yeah, we're good,
Hi,
thank
Kate.
you. We're good. Just trying to see what
evening,
have you got.
technically, sorry.
That's all right. No, it's morning with you. Have you got? Is that an exercise bike you've got behind you?
Yes, looks like
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah.
Unfortunately, and Michael, talk to Kate about exercise bikes, because you like a bit of Peloton, don't you?
I do, yeah, I do. What kind of bike you got there, Kate? Have you got? You haven't got one that you can log into me in the morning and go on one of my classes? No, I don't think you have. I saw there was a film this morning, Kate, of you girls. I think you were a part of the group walking around a bit of turf and it was like Ringa Ringa Roses.
Yeah.
Is that the exercise you're doing as a team?
That's the area that we've got. We got cleared to go into that yesterday because we all came back with negative tests, which was the main one. We've got to have about 3 or 4 more tests before we can go out training in like a really strict environment where they put us all into small bubbles now so that we don't cross contaminate each other. But for the time being, that's our exercise yard. It's about 5 foot long, so you're not getting much done in there, but it's just obviously a good excuse to get out and get some fresh air.
How is morale, Kate? How's it all looking over there?
Yeah, typically we got on the plane and we saw that New Zealand had the first community case for about 300 days. So we thought that we might be coming to another area that's in lockdown. But to be honest, they've got it so under control over here, and the protocols that they've got to get through the airport, to get into hotel systems, it's amazing. And they're obviously getting it very right because they've not got many cases out there. So we've just obviously got to respect that and stick to the rules.
Well, of course, the 50 over World Cup was due to be happening out there next month, and then that was cancelled. I mean, bearing in mind where New Zealand are now, do you think they would maybe too quick to cancel it?
Oh, it's such a difficult question, isn't it? Because obviously when it did get cancelled, I remember we were in our Derby bubble. We just had our first training session as an England team. It was the first time we'd met up. So everything was so unknown then that I think it would have been impossible to say. But I guess selfishly from my point of view, I wouldn't have been able to have my family come over to see me playing my first World Cup. So selfishly from my point of view, I'm looking forward to it being postponed so that I might be able to get people to come out and watch. But it was just so difficult to make that decision. I think that they probably did the right thing at the time, which was all that they could do.
Okay, we hear a lot, about the bio bubbles, and obviously you're quarantining down in New Zealand, and we hear so much that the ECB are doing everything they can to look after the well-being of all the players. What are they putting in place to make sure that you all are okay? You are being able to speak, or you're on Zoom. You obviously got your Ringa Ringa Roses that you can go out and do every day. But what is it that they're doing to make sure that you're all absolutely fine?
There's obviously a lot going on behind the scenes. We've got our psychologist who's come with us who, is pretty much in touch with the girls whenever we need her to be. Unfortunately for her, she's got to keep her phone on loud during the night. But we learnt a lot through the Derby bubble, to be honest. I think that hit a lot of us like a ton of bricks. I certainly wasn't expecting it to be as tough as it was, especially with it only being a 3-week period. But we had, I'd say, like a contingency plan that we had before we went in, that we had strategies of how we cope or what we look like if we're not coping, so that the staff members could pick up on that and talk to us and try and work through whatever we're going through. But the biggest thing for me is that we've been out of company with our families for so long, or we are when we're in these bubbles, and that's what I find most difficult, and probably what I took for granted in normal life when cricket was not behind closed doors. So for me, I think it's almost relying on my family a little bit more as well, and making sure that I'm keeping in touch with them. Obviously a bit more difficult with a 13-hour time difference, but
to wake him up at silly o'clock.
My dad goes to bed at 6 p.m. now, so I don't speak to him.
Yeah, well, we appreciate the fact that you've actually chosen to spend some time talking to us rather than talking to your family, Kate. So that's really good of you. It is that you've not had much cricket, as you said, in the last 12 months. It's been, we watched the men had a really lucky time in the summer. You had that bubble in Derby. You've not got. I mean, what's coming up this year? You've got Pakistan to look forward to in the autumn as well. But how much cricket do you think you'll play this year?
We're really hopeful that we've got a jam-packed 2021 and 2022, to be honest. Pretty sure that we've got 2 series coming up internationally in our summer, as well as the 100. We've got the new domestic competitions as well, so we'll have 2020 cricket and 50-over cricket with that. And then, like you said, we go into Pakistan in the autumn, which will be an unbelievable series. We're all really excited to be able to travel over there. And then we're going into an Ashes at either the back end of 2021 or early 2022, followed by the World Cup that was postponed this year. So, we've had a pretty bleak 12 months, to be honest. But then following that, we know that we've got a pretty exciting 18 months to 1 year. So, as grim as it has been, it's obviously really, we've got a lot to look forward to, and we've got a lot to work towards, and a lot of big trophies to try and win.
Okay, let's get to the crunch. Forget the cricket, the podcast. Where's your partner in crime? Where is she?
It's you and Alex Hartley, isn't it, doing the No Balls podcast?
No, but has Phil been on yet? Has he been asked? He's waiting for the invitation.
No, I know. I was gonna use this opportunity live on air to invite you on.
I'm there.
Well, there you go. You've got the platform. Ask him.
Ellie, you're next as well, if that's all right.
Oh, of course,
yeah.
of course.
Will they get a cap and a mug as well?
They can have whatever they want.
Tuffers and Vaughan's Cricket Show
on 5 Live.